It is your Wednesday daily delivery. I'm Michael Rand. Glad to be back again for another show. Good one coming up. Velle E. Neal III joins me here in just a few minutes to talk all sorts of stuff. Minnesota United, Emanuel Reynoso, Minnesota Twins, lack of offense, and Byron Buxton being what seems to be a full-time DH right now. And we'll get to Dalvin Cook, Vikings running back, at least for now. Velle thinks that tenure is going to come to an end soon. Reading the writing on the wall there, and I got to Velle about his Blackhawks in Chicago and whether or not that draft lottery was rigged, like so many people wanted to say on Twitter the other day after they won the lottery, coming up from not the top position to get that big market. Suspicious. We will see. Twins continued their flailing, lost 6-1 to the Padres. Minnesota United won in the U.S. Open Cup in dramatic fashion after blowing a couple leads. Both of those dovetail nicely from my conversation with Velle, so we'll get to that at the end of the show. First, though, what did I miss? Jaden McDaniels, Timberwolves forward, not named to either the first or second team All-NBA defense on Tuesday. A lot of Twitter outrage here, especially in the Twin Cities, a little bit nationally too. So I kind of looked at it. I wanted to get into a little bit of that and kind of what goes into his snub, whether Jaden McDaniels was snubbed. But I've got a bigger subject branching from that has to do with a different Timberwolves player. But we'll deal with McDaniels here for a minute. I thought he had a good defensive season. I think he's a really good defensive player. I think he's got a very bright defensive future. Was he snubbed? I really don't think so. I think he's a very good, like I said, a very good defensive player, but look who finished above him in the voting. Look who was on the first two teams for forwards. Who else are you going to take off of the team? You got Evan Mobley, Jaren Jackson Jr., Draymond Green, and OJ Anunoby. Those are four really good defensive players. He finished sixth among them. If there's a third team, he would have been on the third team. Jaden McDaniels would have. I thought he was, again, a good player, needs to foul less, can guard a lot of different positions, very versatile, a Swiss Army knife. He needs to get a little bit more consistent. He needs to get a little bit better. If he deserves to be on this team, his time will come. His time will come probably next year or the year after. He's got to build that reputation a little bit more. That's how these teams work. That's how this whole process works. That's how voting works. You do it enough times, and then you get yourself into that situation where you are going to get honored. So I don't really see it as a snub. I see it as Jaden McDaniels is arriving. He's close. He's not all the way there yet. He'll get there someday soon. He's already very good, maybe not quite good enough to be in the top 4 or top 2 of forwards in the NBA, but he'll get there soon enough. Let's not worry about snubs. I don't really think he was snubbed. I thought he was a good player, and he'll continue to get better as long as he doesn't punch walls and as long as he continues to progress. Now, more interesting to me in all of this is that I didn't hear a single word about Rudy Gobert in any of this voting, and for good reason. I don't think Rudy Gobert had a season that was worthy of being all NBA defense. But do you realize that Rudy Gobert was all NBA defensive team, first team, 6 years in a row? These last 6 seasons before being traded to the Timberwolves, he was an NBA all-defense first team player from 2017 through 2022. He was the defensive player of the year in the NBA in 2018, 2019, and 2021. This year did not get a single vote. Not just not on one of the teams as the center. That honor went to Brook Lopez on the first team and Bam Adebayo on the second team for Miami. Did not get a single vote, Rudy Gobert. Now, I don't know if he deserved a vote. I don't know if if reputation could have saved him. I just thought that was interesting because even last year, he was the runaway winner as the first team center in this category. So, a couple things off of that. Number one, didn't have a year that was necessarily worthy of it, but it wasn't as bad as maybe we think of it just because the trade appeared to be so lopsided. And by the way, Walker Kessler, the center the Wolves gave Utah, got one second-place vote, more than Rudy Gobert this season. But Gobert, did not have a bad season. It just wasn't great by his standards. Defensive rating-wise was still pretty good. Thinking about like block percentage, he was 19th in the NBA. Usually he's top 10, had been top 10 for 5, 6, 7, 8 years in a row. A lot of the other advanced metrics were still pretty good, but again, not up to his usual standards, not up to what he had been in the NBA. Still a good defensive rebounder. Looking at some more advanced metrics, defensive win shares. He was 14th in the NBA this season with 3.5 defensive win shares. So a good season, but not a great season for Rudy Gobert. Now, the other point I want to make on this is that Tim Connelly gets rightly maligned for that trade. It looks bad, looks really bad in retrospect, but Rudy Gobert was not the player this year that Tim Connelly thought he was trading for. This was an all-NBA first-team defensive player for 6 consecutive years, including 3 of those years winning Defensive Player of the Year. He was not that same player this year. He was a very good defensive player, but he was not a difference-making elite defensive player, and that showed up in the voting this year. So want to give a little bit of a shout-out to kind of the trade and what Tim Connelly was probably thinking he was getting and what Rudy Gobert produced this season. And for the fact that nobody's saying a single word about Gobert getting snubbed, not even getting a single vote, tells you how his performance this season completely was different than what he had showed in all those years in Utah. Completely showed that he was not the same player this year. Does not excuse the trade, does not make it any more lopsided or any less lopsided, I should say, than it appears right now. But this is not the player that thought they were getting. If you would have thought at the beginning of the year that Rudy Gobert would not get a single vote in the Defensive Player of the Year, All-NBA defensive team voting, that would not have been a great sign, and it did not turn out to be a great sign for the Wolves. So think about that as the years go on. Is he going to get any better? Should they have seen this coming? This was his age 30 season. He'll be 31 very soon. Should they have seen this coming? Should they have seen a regression coming? I don't know if you could have imagined this sort of regression from Gobert. So, bigger picture here is this. Jaden McDaniels not snubbed. Anthony Edwards got a couple votes, by the way. Good for Ant. Rudy Gobert, not a single vote for the defense. All NBA. That's a surprise based on where we were at the start of the year. Not a surprise based on what the season played out. And a terrible sign for the Wolves because they were not receiving the player they thought they were getting in this trade.
Take a playcation to Mystic Lake. With 24/7 gaming, the good times never have to end. And you can satisfy your cravings at our restaurants and bars. Or relax in one of our luxurious hotel rooms. Those that play together, stay together. And don't forget to join Club M so you can spark new memories and bask in the rewards along the way. Follow the lights to Mystic Lake, where every day is play day.
Good to be joined right now by Velle E, Neal III, columnist from the Star Tribune. Assume you made it back safely from your journey to Canterbury a few days ago for the Derby. Did you have a good time out there?
Oh, it was awesome. I got there about 1:00 in the afternoon, and there was already a good amount of people there, betting on the preliminary races. But the bonnets were already out, and the weird fashion assemblies were out already with the pink jackets and the red ties and the white shoes and the blue pants. Those are already out in force, and it just got louder and louder. And I made a point just to kind of hit all 3 levels of Canterbury, just to kind of talk to people about what they were thinking and things like that. And I got some interesting responses to Two Phils and to Sheriff Loveberry and the possibility of Canterbury having like a connection to a Derby victory, So it was entertaining. The couple, I said, "Are you guys going to bet for Two Phils?" And the woman said, "Should we?" I just cracked me up.
Right. That was funny.
So I like getting that atmosphere into my story. But I'm telling you, Mike, when Two Phils came around that final turn and headed for home, the roar at Canterbury was unbelievable. It was like the press box almost was rumbling, at the possibility that there was going to be a local tie to this thing. But he still ran a great race. Second is nothing to sneeze at, you think about what it takes to win a Derby. But it was a great day out there.
Was a great day out there, and it was a big weekend potentially for Minnesota United because they got Emanuel Reynoso is back in town. He's kind of going through some testing, see where his fitness is at. We still don't know a whole lot about kind of where he is in terms of actually getting onto the pitch, what his teammates might think of all this, but he is at least here. We've heard Adrian Heath talk about it a couple times now. We've heard some of his teammates already kind of chime in on this. What is your take on this? We've talked about this a couple times when he was missing for these many months. Now that they've gotten him out of Argentina and back here, what do you think is a realistic timetable and expectation for how this situation plays out?
I'm thinking if this is like a training camp scenario, the unanswered question, Mike, about this is that where is he at mentally?
Yeah.
Did he just come here because he got tired of people begging him to come and he's just trying to placate them? Or has he gotten over whatever personal issue he had and is ready to get on the pitch, and train and combine with his teammates? I'm still thinking that 3 weeks, maybe a month. That's the way I see it. Because right now, I'm not trying to sound like a patient, and it gets used too much. But I just want to know what his mental health is right now, about where he is as a player, where he is on the Loons, and what the Loons are thinking about him. Because I'm guessing, teammates can be like, you kind of turned your back on this man. We were here in the foxhole, and you weren't with us. And you did it by your own volition. That would be concerning to me as a player. Ray's got to say a lot of things to his teammates to get them to understand that he's back on board, and they're going to get him, 100% physically and mentally, to do this thing. Adrian Heath's got to make sure there's harmony in the locker room between all this as well. He pretty much tore up his, Adrian likes to score goals.
Yes.
It's been a problem. And he pretty much redid his entire attack without Ray to become more defensive minded, So what's that transition now? So you just you tear everything up again, automatically, change things to include Ray, or do you do a gradual changing, or do you put Ray in the middle of that situation and you play the same compact defense, but you just have one guy who can, unlock the door to the other team's defense, when it's time, when they turn the ball over and get in transition. So I just think there's a lot of tentacles to this that we don't know about. First of all, why in the hell did he decide he needed to stay in Argentina? So they got to make sure he's in the right place. Then he's got to be fit. We don't know if he was playing or working out. We don't know what his fitness level is. So I'm saying at least 3 weeks and maybe a month just before we could probably see Ray in the uniform.
And this was easier earlier in the year when they were winning without him, right? When they were getting results, when they were, winning a lot of low scoring matches, because defense has been what's been carrying them. But since they've been winless here in, I think it's now 5 straight MLS matches, they scored a couple times at the night, but they gave up 3 in Vancouver. That was a little bit uncharacteristic, but usually it's been, 1-0, 0-0 in one game a couple of games ago. They just haven't been able to score. And when you're struggling to win and struggling to score, you draw a direct line between your missing playmaker, your missing all-star, and then it becomes even more heightened.
Yeah, they kind of hit the Ted Lasso stage of this, where they can't get a positive result for
Ted Lasso stage. Nice, yes.
Well, I'm catching up on Lasso. The first year in the Champions League, they tied their first 7 matches of the year, So, and then they actually lost, but they celebrated for breaking the tie streak.
That's right. Yeah.
So I don't know if the Loons are ready to celebrate, if they can just kick the streak to the curb. But and like I said, Adrian, likes to attack. He's had trouble finding a number 9. He just has. It's too bad someone more polished can't get on the end of sort of raised passes and put the ball in the net. I keep thinking Maria should be that guy, but he just can't take that next step forward, man. So I'm a little baffled at that. And he's got some new pieces he needs to work in. It's still early in the MLS season, so this team can change its personality. It depends if the players are ready to let it happen, if Adrian's ready to let it happen, and if Ray is ready to come in and play the way he's normally played.
Yeah, it's going to be, it's one of the more fascinating stories. And I feel like it's, the Loons, Minnesota United, they're definitely in the echelon of, major tier sports here, but they don't get, they don't get the attention of, obviously, of the Vikings or Twins or even still the Wild and Wolves. I feel like if this was happening, if this story had played out with, the Vikings best player or the Wolves best player, I guess Towns was out for a long time, but that's different. He was injured. If there was just somebody missing from one of those teams for months on end, this would have been a much bigger, differently covered story. It's still significant, but I would have been interested to see, if soccer was a little bit further along in this market, how this story would have, the kind of angst this would have caused with the general sporting public.
Exactly. I mean, look at the worldwide reaction to Lionel Messi, going on a trip without the team
Right.
approving it and getting, suspended for 2 weeks. I mean, that was like worldwide news over that. And the next thing you know, Messi's going to leave PSG when his contract runs out. So, and everybody's like following every move. Is this the time he comes to MLS? Will he go back to Barcelona? What's going to happen here? I always thought that Messi would end up playing in MLS somehow, and that we would sign him to a David Beckham-like contract for a couple of years. I know he has a home in Miami, and it just makes sense for him to go play for Inter Milan. I would let it happen if I was the league. It'd be for the greater good of the league. But the Reynoso thing did not have the same impact, and I'm trying to figure out, if the same thing would happen with like Paxton Pomykal in Dallas or one of the stud players that Philadelphia has a great farm system. One of those stud players Philadelphia has, if they went on a holdout and didn't show up, how much that would, if Kellen Acosta decided not to, play, would that be big news? I don't know. We're not there because if Justin Jefferson
resonate, doesn't hit the same. Yeah.
If Justin Jefferson doesn't show up to Vikings practice, there's purple blood flowing through the streets of the Twin Cities.
Like when Stephon Diggs was doing kind of some of this stuff, that was like daily news.
Exactly. We don't get that type of interest in the round ball game instead of the pointy ball game.
No. Well, speaking of some other round ball games, you wrote last week that you think it's time for the Twins to get Byron Buxton, sooner rather than later, back into center field, at least on a part-time basis, because of his value there. We all know how good of a center fielder he is, platinum glove caliber. He's won that award before. But we read in, today, and Carlos Correa talked about it on the broadcast a couple nights ago, that they've kind of talked Buxton into this being at least more of a medium to long-term solution to preserve his health, this DHing business. And that, Correa was part of the lobbying effort, cooked him a nice dinner and, kind of got him to accept this role.
Brainwashed him.
Brainwashed him. That's your word for it. What do you think of all this?
I get that. I get the desire to keep him on the field. His history isn't great, I talked to Derek Falvey before I wrote that column. Falvey's like, it's working right now. Former Pioneer Press beat writer Gordon Wintermeyer, who lives in Chicago, just did a freelance story when the Twins were in Chicago and talked to Buxton. Buxton was like, well, it's working this way. It seems like everybody's comfortable with this. And I'm like, no, do not be comfortable. The weather's getting better. Your offense is struggling. And at the time I was making my plea, I was imagining a lineup with Kirilloff, Larnach, Gallo, and Buxton and Correa all in it. Since then, Larnach hit the skids and got sent down. So that allowed Kirilloff to come up and just move into first base seamlessly with Gallo, assuming left field. So they didn't have to do anything drastic to try to accommodate this or speed up the move Buxton the center fielder train that I've been trying to ride on here. I just think that when you have a 5-2 player, you're limiting him by being a DH. He's not putting all his tools on the field, and therefore you're not going to be the best team you can be. I understand being careful about Buxton, who has an injury history, but his first injury last year is when he slid into second base. I want to say in Boston. He also got hit with a pitch in the hand wrist area. As soon as you step on the field, there's a risk of getting injured. And the other thing too, your risk of injury increases if you don't go at things 100%. So I hope he's not. Well, here's the thing: is he 100% healthy too? Is he favoring a knee at all? Because he does not look as fast as he's looked 2-3 years ago. Are there some other factors here that we don't know? But all I know is this: is that the Twins are at their best when Buxton is in the lineup as a hitter and as a defender. I know they have Michael Taylor, and their drop-off is much less worse than when Buxton was out and Jake Cave played center last year. I get that. But Buxton's still a brilliant outfielder with a great arm, and he can just have so much impact on the game on a daily basis if he's doing everything he can do. And that makes the Twins a better team. And that's all I was pointing out with the column.
Well, that's good. And I agree with that. I think, and the point about the tools is a good one too, because if you're a 5-tool player and you're really only using one or two of those tools right now, he's not running much. They entered Tuesday, Lavelle, with 9 stolen bases this year as a team. And I think Taylor's got 5 of them, maybe. They are not running at all. I think they're tied for last in the majors. There's been a little bit of not a speed renaissance, but the bigger bases and the step off rules being what they are, it has influenced the running game a little bit, just not here. He used to be a guy that was a threat anytime he got on first base. He's not that threat anymore. So if you're taking away speed, defense, and the throwing arm that he has, you're limiting his tools really to power because he's not an average hitter.
Right. And at least I did see him. He put the oven mitt on when he got to first base during the Cleveland series. So
okay,
at least there's a possibility, and that might just be protecting him if he tries to go from first to third on a single. But still, the fact he was wearing it, that gives me hope that he'll try to steal a couple bags here now and then. Yeah, I mean the Pittsburgh Pirates are like on pace for like 260 stolen bases this year.
Yeah.
But the Twins don't have that many fast players. Buxton's one of them. You mentioned Taylor. Polanco isn't a burner. Kepler isn't a burner. Gallo, no. Kirilloff, no. Larnach, no. Miranda, hell no. Correa, nope. So they know what they are, because in spring training they weren't they weren't working on stolen bases as much as they were working on going from first to third because of the end of the shift and being aggressive in a base pass. I mean, they're trying to accentuate the best parts of themselves, and they know that base stealing is not one of their best parts. So they know that, and I think they're just realizing the talent level on the roster. It's more geared toward hitting line drives and home runs. So let's see what happens, because they need something to get the offense going. I'm hoping Kirilloff could be a part of that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I want to get you on one more thing before we go. You mentioned to me, and I think you wrote about this a little bit the other day, you predicted Dalvin Cook is going to get cut, I believe, at some point here. And I don't think that's a far-fetched notion at all. It just feels like a weird place that he's still on the roster. They don't need to do anything yet, but they're going to have to sign their draft picks at some point. They don't have much cap space. Like, something's got to give here, and that seems like kind of the obvious move if he's not going to, take a reduced salary and a reduced role. What's your thinking there?
Yeah, it sounds like they've been at a standstill as far as trying to get him to rework his deal. And I think that's going to be problematic if they tried to trade him. A team has to take on that contract. Of course, a trade could happen if the team that's trading for him reworks a deal. That's something that's more amenable for him. But I don't see it happening this late in the game. And I could easily see Cook getting cut and him just latching on somewhere. For some reason, Miami Dolphins fans still want him despite their running back situation being altered. I think they got a better chance of keeping Sedarius Smith, who, we all know he famously put his house in the market late in the season. And then I heard a couple weeks later that the agent contacted a realtor in town and said, well, we shouldn't have sold the house too quick. We're going to try to find a 1-year rental. So it sounds like they're going to try to work something out to keep him in town, but have not heard any positive vibes on the Dalvin Cook front. And when you're making, was he making $6 million next year? I think
his cap number is like $14 million next year.
Yeah. I mean, when it's that high, I mean, it's just, I can't. It doesn't seem like they're going to be able to work out an agreement to restructure his deal. And no one's going to want to trade for that contract. No one is. So that's why I think a cut is going to be the most likely outcome.
Yeah, that feels like it too. I mean, it's crazy too how much we age running backs, especially in this league, how their value just plummets once they hit 26, 27. Like, it's hard for these guys to get sometimes a second contract, let alone a third contract. And he's still, still a good productive player. I think we've heard some stuff that they're looking maybe for some more efficiency in the running game, and that they didn't think he was, that he was missing some stuff last year that he normally would have had, that he's still that he still hits the home runs, but he doesn't hit a lot of singles and doubles that they could use to get into more favorable, second down distances. And that's maybe what they like about Alexander Madison and maybe some of their other options. But, he's a guy that's been, he was important. He had long runs against Buffalo and Miami, games that they needed him to break one. So it's interesting to think about their offense without him, even if it makes sense that they would move on from him.
Here's a headline here: Vikings trade proposal flips Dalvin Cook to Buffalo. Now, I heard this rumor a couple months ago that Dalvin would go to Buffalo and play with his brother.
Right, his brother's there.
They just signed Latavius Murray.
Yeah,
like right after the draft is over. So I don't think that's a destination possibility anymore. So And he turns 28 in August, so he's right in that range now. You got to
Right.
be a little careful about the mileage and the wear and tear. And didn't he have surgery during the off season on that shoulder?
He did, yeah. He had off-season surgery.
So, yeah, I just it's not trending in the right direction to me.
No.
Yeah, I just think he's gonna end up in another uniform somehow before next season.
Yeah, makes sense. One last thing, Lavelle, you're a Chicago guy. You enjoying the rigged draft lottery that brought your Blackhawks?
Sour grapes. Yeah, the original 16 gets propped up again by the league. I heard that before. All I know is this: Blackhawks sold almost 2 million in season tickets right after the draft lottery last night, and they succeeded in their goal to tank.
Yes.
Finishing second is not that bad because there's another center out of the University of Michigan named Fratelli who's pretty damn good himself. So everybody is convinced that he's the second best player in the draft after Bedard. So, and Fratelli, I think it is. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. He's 6'2". Bedard's 5'9". Be happy with finishing second. As Anaheim Mighty Ducks. So I'm happy. I mean, it's been the last few years have been rough, watching Taves and Kane's, final decent seasons of their career kind of go wasted, and all the trades they made. They traded Kirby Doc. They traded a couple other young guys with upside. Alex DeBrincat, it's almost like they're purposely trying to tick off Kane to get him to ask for a trade. They may have succeeded, but this is a start. This is the start of the rebirth here with Mr. Bedard.
Well, we'll see. Could be. Enjoy all the rigged outcomes that these big markets get. No, it never happens here, except they have had a couple. Wolves have had a couple number one overall picks in the last decade, so I don't think the deck is quite.
We're not going to start talking about Wolves draft history, are we?
No, we don't have time for that today. Maybe another time. Maybe in June.
Oh God, that's a two-part series.
Thanks a lot.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Always great catching up with Lavelle. 2 postscripts to our conversation. Let's use those to finish up with the cooler. Number 1, who needs Emanuel Reynoso? Loons score 3 times against Philadelphia in the U.S. Open Cup on Tuesday night. Lose a couple leads, a 2-0 lead and a 3-2 lead, but advance on penalty kicks to the round of 16. Good win for the Loons. Get to win at home for the first time all season, play Wonderwall at Allianz. So that's a big win for them. Maybe they can get some momentum going in the right direction for them. Got some offense, found some things even without Reynoso back to back in the lineup, back to full strength. So we'll see where that leads them. Again, it's not a league match, it's a U.S. Open Cup match, but gets them into the round of 16 in that kind of separate tournament of all levels of U.S. soccer. So good for them, good win, good dramatic win for them. Looked like they were going to looked like they gave it away a couple times late, but ended up rallying and getting that win, getting them in a penalty kick. So, we'll see where that takes them for the rest of the year. Now, the Twins did not solve their offensive problem. Lose 6-1 to the Padres, made 3 errors in the 7th inning. Carlos Correa, 0 for 5, 2 strikeouts. His batting average continues to plummet. Maybe you should have Byron Buxton over for dinner. They can talk about something else. Maybe Carlos Correa taking a day off or something like that, because it is not good for Carlos Correa right now. He is hitting right now. Let me look that up really quick. He is hitting 185 right now. 185 on the season after going 0 for 5 with 2 strikeouts. Left some guys on base in this game. Tough for him. Tough for a lot of the guys in the lineup. Only 6 hits after that terrible road trip where they averaged about 6 hits a game. That is not going to get it done. Wasted another good outing from Louis Varland. The starting pitching certainly doing its job. Hitting continues to be the problem for this team. Continues to be the issue, continues to be a struggle, and until that gets better, it's going to be dicey for this team. I know that the pitching can take them a certain way. I think the pitching will hold up for most of this season. If they don't get a little bit more hitting, though, at least consistently, this is going to be a season that's going to be frustrating. They might still, probably still good enough to win the AL Central if they can hit just enough. But when will these bats wake up? It's frustrating to watch right now that everybody going so poorly in this lineup right now. It is hard to watch, and it is hard to understand how it is going to get any better. But these are good hitters. There's got to be something that turns the tide. We'll see what happens, but not good on Tuesday night once again. And that will do it for me today. Chip Scoggins coming up on Thursday's show, live and in the studio. That should be fun, getting him in the Star Tribune studio. So listen for that on Thursday. Until then, I'm Michael Rand. We'll talk to you later.